What's up, guys? Welcome back to the live stream. My last live stream got 50 likes, and I promised you guys that I would deliver another live stream tonight. I just did a live stream, but YouTube didn't send out the notifications, and nobody was literally showing up. So hopefully they're going to send the notifications for this one. It kind of makes you want to choke somebody out when they're not sending their notifications. It just, it sucks. But anyways, today's live stream, Palmer Aquatics. That's me. It's going to be on tank mates with African cichlids. And I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. Oh, what are you talking about? If you're a seasoned African cichlid keeper, you know that for the most part, you should only be keeping African cichlids with other African cichlids. So it's, but I've noticed that this gets posted in the Facebook groups all the time, and I see it in fish stores, and I see it a lot of, with a lot of beginners. People do keep tank mates with African cichlids. So I think it's worth talking about, and it's a topic that's kind of sketchy, and I know a lot of people are going to troll on this, but things that happen that people are afraid to talk about just because it's kind of a sketchy topic. Actually, Paul is a great one. He is a seasoned African cichlid keeper. Inventory King, awesome channel, check it out. I'm guessing, Paul, you saw this topic and you started to cringe because you were like, tank mates? And I'm talking regular tank mates with African cichlids. So it's like, it's kind of going to make some people cringe, but it's worth talking about. And I would love to know your experience in the chat right now. What, if you have kept fish successfully with African cichlids? And let me bring up the chat here. I just did a live stream and literally nobody was here because it didn't send out the notifications. And I can see my thumbnail didn't work. Awesome. Thank you, YouTube. Shout out. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's bring up the video here. See who's here. I saw Inventory King is here. Matt's Monster Fish. I didn't see in the last chat, Matt. Maybe you were building your huge stand for your 1,000-gallon acrylic tank. All right. I never got the notification, says Matt. Yeah, YouTube's all weird with notifications right now, but that's all right. Who cares? We're moving on. Naturally Lochi says, I think a heavily armored fish for once, not loaches. Yes, the go-to, the first tank mate you're gonna think of is a catfish. And in my personal opinion, I don't know. I'm on the fence with keeping catfish with Africans because I've kept Africans for years, and I'm by no means an expert. Someone else can be an expert at African cichlids. I'm very new to them, or not new, but just somewhat of a noob, but I know their tendencies, and I've kept them for a long time. But I've had some luck keeping plecos, essentially armored catfish, with African cichlids, but that's only under the circumstance that the catfish can hide in a cave. If I'm gonna throw a catfish in a cichlid tank where there's a lot of aggression like African cichlids, and Africans get bored and they just nitpick at everything. So and if they see that, sometimes that pleco moving around, or there's tons of different types of catfish. All right, let's see what Paul says here, because Paul is a seasoned African cichlid breeder, and I'm glad he's in the chat because this is perfect. He said, I used to keep South American cichlids, and I had one Mabuna in the tank, and it was okay. It's doable. Prefer species only with African cichlids. I like doing Malawi with Malawi, Tang with Tang, etc. Yes, see, and this is kind of gonna get, it's gonna get weird here, but people do keep other fish with them, and as far as catfish, I would make sure it is an armored catfish. Essentially, any of like the durable plecos, the common plecos, the Raphael catfish are extremely popular with Africans. I don't know why, but I think they do well because the Raphaels are always hiding. I just did a video on them last week, and they're always hiding. A bunch of people are saying, yeah, man, I didn't get the notifications. Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you guys. Okay, so African cichlids. I looked up a couple of articles online on the compatibility of keeping other fish with African cichlids. And if my honest opinion, right off the bat, is that first, I can tell you the tendencies the fish is going to need to be kept with African cichlids. First of all, it's almost like it's going to have to be a buffer fish. And when I say buffer, it's a lot of times a fish used to kind of They're not aggressive, but they can also hold their own ground when being aggressed upon, essentially. Like buffer fish, I'm gonna say like silver dollars can sometimes be that. South Americans are a lot of times that, like a firemouth can take a beating but also hold its own. Sometimes tiger barbs are that way, because especially in like a school, because tiger barbs, a fish with tendencies that are gonna like swim all over, not give too much train of thought about one single thing and sit there and analyze it for too long. That's gonna be a good fish, like silver dollars. And the bigger the size, silver dollars is better. Tiger barbs, I would say some South Americans do well. Jewel cichlid, well, I guess the jewels are kind of a weird one there. A lot of people keep jewels with them, but they say jewels breed really easily. So as soon as they start breeding, it's gonna be a toss up. So, all right, Paul commented. I want to read this. I think the huge thing to keep in mind is what can fit in the fish's mouth. If it's too small with Africans, some are predators. Yes, that is a good. I think that's with any cichlid in general. If it can fit in its mouth, it's probably going to go in its mouth. But the thing with the Africans, I feel like, is that they sit there and get bored and they like nitpick, and that's why Africans, like, they're so like in depth with what they're doing and who they're bothering. Like, if they have something against another fish, they're putting in all their effort to make their life absolutely miserable, and they will do that with tank mates. But that's where the buffering fish, some other fish that come to mind, rainbows. Some of the rainbows in like a school can do very, very well because they're so fast you can't catch them. What are some other buffer fish? Like the rainbow sharks, I would say, bala sharks. Barbs, tinfoil barbs are good, because essentially barbs just do their own thing, and they're like non-stop, like all over the place, and they're not going to have the time, like they're just a buffer fish. And yeah, I don't know how to explain this, but I'm looking up some of the articles here on some of these like mainstream websites that kind of like, when you search up fish things, they're not a good resource because it's this huge mainstream conglomerate website that ranks high in Google, but it's not a good resource. I want to see what some of these articles say, and Tropical Fish Care Guides is actually a pretty good guide. That's one of them. That's tropicalfishcareguides.com. They're saying the red-tailed shark is a decent fish to keep with them. I have to agree with that. And next, I would say loaches, the clown loach. I think clown loaches, though, can sometimes... I'm on the fence with the clown loach. Giant danios, I would highly agree with that. That's kind of a buffering fish that's kind of going to do its own thing. The African red-eyed tetra, plecos, upside-down catfish, and the leopard bushfish. I gotta say, though, I've been keeping the leopard bushfish, or the spotted bushfish, African spotted fish, whatever you want to call it, for a couple months now. And I gotta say that they're pretty timid, and they're doing a lot of hiding, even though I have 4 of them in there. In a community tank, they do a lot of hiding. I don't feel, in my personal opinion, they would do that great with them. All right, let's see what else is going on here. They have a nice variety and big ones. Are you guys talking about where to buy African cichlids? I would personally buy them from Imperial Tropicals, and they really got to start like paying me to say that. But they have a great lineup of African cichlids. And if you guys are wondering, Inventory King Paul over on his channel, he keeps mainly like bigger, like tropheus like Africans from Lake Tanganyika, right, Paul? That's mainly what you keep, which are like more of a predatory fish because they have larger mouths and they will feed on the smaller African cichlids in natural habitat. So, all right, gonna try to keep up here. Another thing to consider, if you want to keep Malawi Mbuna with others, they are extremely aggressive and will kill, but some tanks do well with it. Matt's Monster Fish does Imperial Tropicals. Yes. I just saw Imperial Tropicals, they had some funky things going on with their shipping right now because it's so cold outside. I'm sure it's going to pass, though. I think it's only certain areas, like where I live in the North Pole, essentially. Some folks can never have enough filtration. Some fish need super clean water. Some, like my flower horn, are super messy. All right. Can I keep a couple of convicts with my African cichlid tank? I feel like the convict can be kept with Africans, and they're going to hold their own. But when convicts are pretty good buffering fish until they start to breed with other things, and then they turn into this utter, just crazy predator, essentially. All right, where am I at? Where I'm at, it's -5. Okay, you're at the same latitude as me. Is the latitude, or is it longitude? I don't know. I shouldn't be talking smart like I am smart. Where do you get your peacock bass? Where'd you get your peacock bass? Yeah, Michigan Aquatics is keeping a peacock bass in a 55-gallon tank. Happy Toast says, I don't have school tomorrow. I'm so chilling. Why don't you have school tomorrow? Is it because of the cold weather? I feel like this is a side rant, but if these children get school days, why don't we get work snow days / cold days? You know what I'm saying? There's car accidents. I don't know, it's a whole other side rant, but we should get, as adults, snow days. You know what I'm saying? All right, what was I talking about? All right, let's go on to the next article here. What can coexist with African cichlids? This is kind of a more mainstream website. I'm sure the answers are kind of going to be somewhat funny. Dwarf cichlids, I gotta disagree. So, like some of the rams and such are considered dwarf cichlids. Bolivians, like they're not going to do well with African cichlids. In my personal experience, I gotta say that's probably a terrible idea. Angels and discus fish. Just take a deep breath on that one. Angelfish can be mildly aggressive themselves, so I'm gonna guess. I don't know though, because I've seen it done. It's really like, I think it's preach to people not to do it, but some people do it and get away with it. I've seen African cichlids kept with Oscar fish, and they do just fine because the Oscars can't catch them to eat on. The Oscar fish cannot catch them to eat them. All right. Central American cichlids, I gotta disagree with a lot of the Central American cichlids. They are more aggressive, and they're not going to, like a Texas cichlid and an African cichlid tank is not going to go well. That's going to be a bad story to talk about. And that's what happens in this industry. Like, people put fish together that shouldn't be kept together, and fish die all the time. That's why essentially videos like this can forewarn people. Maybe they're doing research, maybe they're not. I'm guessing a lot of people don't do research, so I think a firemouth would work with them, says Paul. I think a firemouth, I'm on the fence with that. I've kept so many firemouths. Some of them are crazy. Some of them are kind of like mild-mannered. It's really a hit or miss. So I think it's a safe bet to go with an armored catfish. I would maybe watch some of the other catfish, even some of the smaller armored ones, because if a African starts to think that it can start to nibble at it and if it's a smaller in size, a bigger catfish is going to be better, essentially. I chugged a Mountain Dew before this live stream, so I'm sorry, I'm kind of gassy. It's so hit and miss, says Paul. Yeah, that's kind of why, like, this stream's it's at the end of the day, let's preach to keep Africans with other Africans, and to be even more vague, similar sized Africans with similar sized Africans, because there's a lot of like haps that get a lot bigger, and they have bigger mouths, like Paul was saying, and they just have more predatory. They essentially eat the smaller African cichlids, and that's just how it works, you know? All right, so let's see here. This is from the cichlidforum.com. They're saying clown loaches do pretty good. Sharks, like the red-tailed sharks, some larger rainbows, some danios, sucker-mouth catfish. I think it's funny when they call them sucker-mouth. Like, who's calling a pleco a sucker-mouth? I'm sorry, but larger tetras, the black-tailed tetra, the Congo tetra. Please be aware that some of these have neutral pH requirements. Yes, that is very true. So maybe you also got to think about water parameters. Although a lot of these fish, like, they come from farms, and even though we're talking about like pHs and stuff, they're coming from the same waters from a lot of these big farms. But yes, some tetras do need a lot softer of water, so that should be said. Paul says, I had a huge albino pleco before with Africans and it didn't have any issues. Paul, have you had any plecos that you've lost due to African cichlids? Because I personally have, and it was adequate of size, but they just sat there and got bored. I think they just started picking away at it. They pick at the eyes, and all of a sudden you have a very sick fish, and it just dies in a matter of hours. And I think some huge variables that people need to play in too. How hungry are the fish? How hungry are these Africans essentially to where they're going to be super bored looking for food constantly? Are they well fed, or do they have a good diet? And second, are the catfish, do they have enough hiding spots? Because that's huge when it comes to catfish. And the catfish could come out mainly at night, and essentially you may never see it, and that could still be a cool fish to have even though you don't see a lot of it. Like the Raphaels, you're never going to see. Paul says, I did lose some. I noticed a skeleton in the tank. Yes, that's a beautiful thing about Africans. When fish die in the tanks, sometimes you don't even know they're dead because Africans literally make fish disappear in hours because they sit there and pick at it, and it's crazy. This might be a little personal, but it was expensive. Okay, so I want to look up some more articles just because this is somewhat entertaining to me, and I want to know what different... cuteness.com. We got to see here. The candy-striped plecostomus. I would say... The candy-striped plecostomus. I would have to Google what a picture of that looks like, or what the scientific name is. They say clown loaches is a scaleless fish, very small scales. I don't know why the scales have anything to do with whatever. Emerald green Cory catfish. I gotta disagree with the Cory catfish. I'm gonna put my thumbs down to the Cory catfish. I think that's a bad idea, and yeah, bad idea. Armored catfish. Isn't that essentially the pleco we just talked about? All right, so I don't mean to troll these articles. I just think that sometimes when you look up these fish articles and looking for information, they're just, some of these websites, you kind of, as a fish keeper, you learn to kind of filter through some of these big, huge conglomerate websites. And I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry, guys. Sorry for the second of delay. I had to just kill 1,000 brain cells. What are the different types of Oscars for tank mates? Different types of Oscars. There's a bunch of them. There's lemons, tigers, albinos. Tank mates for Oscars. By the way, guys, I'm getting an Oscar. I'm gonna see it. Oh God. This is super annoying right now. Don't put loaches with Africans. Even clown loaches I would avoid. Yes, loaches, I gotta agree. Coming from naturally loached, you gotta take his advice. He's the loach guy. So, emerald green Corys, there are more robust, but still. Yeah, they're pretty tough Corys, but I gotta disagree. And, by the way, guys, I'm getting an Oscar fish tomorrow. Someone is dropping off a tiger Oscar, and I think it's about this big, so we're going to be getting back into Oscar fish. I don't know if I'm going to say that I wanted an Oscar fish right now, but I have room for it, and someone reached out to me, and I guess I'll take it in. So someone's moving and can't take care of a tank anymore. I don't know the full story. A couple of snails would work. Yes, people forget about snails as tank mates. Snails are a great cleanup crew. That's a great live stream idea actually, on just talking about snails and how I've grown to love snails. Bobby V says, how about the geophagus? Geos are pretty dang nice for the most part. I would guess though, they would do okay. What I would do is keep the geos with the smaller Africans. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to think up some of the scientific names of some of the smaller Africans that stay small. Like the yellow labs, I have a bunch of those. Yellow peacocks, the cobalt blues. These stay pretty small for the most part. So just size does matter with cichlids. Like Paul was saying, if it can fit in his mouth, it's probably going to go in its mouth. Same with like your Oscar fish you were talking about. Oh yeah, Paul's saying some of these species will eat snails. Yeah, so even a lot of South Americans eat snails, and a lot of people don't know that. Cichlids do eat snails. Will eat snails, that is their nickname, snail eaters. Ooh, pulling out the scientific names, Paul. I like it. I'm not good with scientific names. I gotta claim defeat on that. So, all right. So I'm looking at some more of these articles, and they're all kind of saying the same answer with like tiger barbs, and it kind of depends. Like the bigger predatory haps, you're probably not going to be able to keep any tank mates with except other predatory haps, you know? And the haps are from Lake Tanganyika, right, Paul? I'm guessing that right. All right, what are people saying here? Happy Toe says, I think I've committed to Oscars later in my life. I will have a jag cichlid. Yes, I'll probably be doing a live stream. Oh, they're from Lake Malawi. Okay. Emperor cichlid is king. Isn't that the huge, massive African cichlid? As you guys can see, I'm not a huge African cichlid guy. So I'm learning slowly. I've been doing tons of research as of lately because like I told you guys, I'm going to be getting heavily into Africans, and I want to breed more of them because locally African cichlids are the most popular in my state, and I'm sick of going to all the auctions and not being able to sell fish. Yeah, the emperor is from Tanganyika, and the predator haps are from Lake Malawi. Okay. The king is from Lake Tanganyika. Most other big haps are from Lake Malawi, like Paul said. Yes. No pleco with Oscars won't work. Yes, that is another touchy subject. Sometimes plecos just don't go well. It sucks too because I've lost like 13-inch plecos that you think would be completely fine in these like predatory cichlid setups, and they just aren't sometimes. And you come home to a monster dead fish, and it's kind of sad, but it happens, and it's worth talking about. Tiger barbs are a nuisance. I don't know, dude. I'm on a tiger barb kick lately. I have like 15 tiger barbs in the community tank here to my left, and there's a beautiful thing about just community fish that kind of just do their own thing and are almost like a buffering fish. So yeah, and sometimes, like Paul said, it's like finding the right mixture essentially, because sometimes you can take out, like I'll take out a certain fish and the whole tank changes. Like when I take out the flower horn of this tank behind me, the entire tank mellows down like 6 clicks. I mean, that's pretty obvious because it's a flower horn, and a lot of people say it shouldn't even be in there, but they're fine. And I keep an eye on my fish every single day, and I look for. The problem is you need to do a evaluation every single day on your fish, and do a head count if you can. It's tough with Africans because a lot of times the tanks are full of fish, but do a head count and make sure all your fish are there. Caleb Aquatics is in the house. He says, hello, Chris. I have a guppy that's swimming vertically, heads up. I think swim bladder disorder. I can't even find Epsom salt. Is there an alternative? Grapes. That's your screen name, right? Yeah, grapes. I would highly advise sometimes guppies. This is something a lot of people don't talk about. Sometimes guppies just die. And I know it sucks when you have fancy guppies and they just die on people, but they're nicknamed the million fish. It's because, I mean, anything that breeds like crazy, they die like crazy. It's essentially, they're the rabbits of the industry, and sometimes it's a great train of thought to think that you can save your guppies, but sometimes you just can't, and that's very common for guppies to get like swim bladder, bloat. A lot of times you just don't even know what happens, and it sucks when you have like a breeding trio or something, or a breeding pair. It is what it is. But it sounds like you are treating it with the right stuff and doing the right things. Paul says, what Africans are you planning on getting to breed? You know, Paul, I was actually going to reach out to you and ask you some questions, and also some of my local breeders that I always see selling fish at the auctions. I want to ask them what they breed in our water, essentially local to me, what's effectively for them. I mean, obviously the super easy ones like the yellow labs, I've done before, but I guess I really don't even know, to be completely honest. I don't know which ones to breed. So, and I have essentially some local breeders that give me African cichlids for free. They're what do they call them? Unidentified Africans, meaning they're in a huge community tank and they don't know what they are and they don't want them in their tank or their culls. I just take them because I'm not an African cichlid fanatic, but I want to get deeper into it. So I'm going to pick up some books and do some heavy in-depth reading. I've been listening to just every YouTube video I can find on African cichlids. Paul, I've been actually watching a lot of your videos I just watched yesterday the 10 do nots. I think you called it the 10 do nots to do with African cichlids. It's a super old video from you, but it was still super efficient essentially. That'd be a cool idea for you, Paul, because I'm a total noob when it comes to Africans, and I want to I'll give you the video titles that I crave out of seasoned African cichlid keepers like yourself, Paul. Easy African cichlids to breed, easy and profitable African cichlids to breed, and essentially the process for dummies on how, I mean, there's a lot of videos out there already on like getting fry from the mother and stuff. I've been watching them, but it would be a cool series, I think. And which classifications are better to keep for beginners? What are the most desired ones? You know, like I'm really good with like pretty much all other fish except Africans. So like this is my last group of fish to learn, and I will learn them. It's just gonna take me some time. Haps are the in thing, says Paul. Okay. Are you biased though? Because I know haps are the giant, more predatory cichlids, right? And they get larger, and you gotta have bigger tanks. I gotta admit, I'm a monster cichlid guy, so I would probably lean that way. But if I'm trying to sell Africans, is that going to be what people want? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I going to have better luck? Because I'm kind of looking at the side of also making some profit while breeding them, essentially. Like, what is the most in-demand African cichlids? I guess I could just walk into my fish store and look at what they're selling, and probably that's going to be what I should be breeding, essentially. All right. What about loaches? You probably know more about Africans, but it's the opposite for me. There are lots of haps that aren't monsters. Okay, Paul, what is when you consider not a monster? Are we talking like a 6-inch fish? And I guess my next question is like what? I don't know. This could be a whole live stream in itself, and essentially, I could, you know, Paul says I'm breeding Lepturus green, super rare and high demand. It's a huge predatory hap. Okay. I gotta say though, I've messed around with a lot of fish trying to breed for profit and essentially wasted time. Like I wasted like 2 years of my life trying to breed discus fish, and it just wasn't worth my time. So like if I could talk to someone that's like, I want to be at the middle range of like mainstream and kind of not too hard and difficult to do, and essentially I'll be able to get rid of my fish. I would compare it to like, what can I compare it to in the industry? Like guppies, angels. I could breed angels and get rid of them all day long, but like what is that? What are those African cichlids? But maybe haps would sell. Maybe you're right. So guys, I'm tired. It's getting late. My whole household is sleeping, and I'm here live streaming like a weirdo. Stream number 2 says JH Aquatics. You're late. JH Aquatics, you're always late, sir. Paul says the biggest thing I would consider when wanting to breed multiple fish and raising them to sell, build an automatic water change system. Yes, that is what I'm building in my shop right now. So I have that covered. I guess, question, for African cichlids, fry tanks, are fry tanks, like, the best fry tank setup, is that going to be a bare bottom tank? Is it going to have sand? Is it going to have a sponge filter? Is it essentially the same with like South Americans and it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is the best setup for raising African cichlids in a profitable stance? By the way, JH Aquatics, Paul's in the chat here, Inventory King, and I'm kind of picking his brain with some of these African cichlid questions because I'm not an African cichlid guy, and it's really awesome that Paul jumped in here. He says, yes, go with a bare bottom with a sponge. Okay, let me read this again. The chat's jumping on me. No rest for the wicked. Paul says, I would go with a bare bottom with a sponge. Here's with, it's easy to clean. Okay, so it's just like any other fry. How about temperature-wise? Do I have to worry about, because I've been told by some people that Africans can withstand pretty wide ranges of temperatures, or are the fry, with the fry, are you going to want to be able, like, are you going to want to be more stringent? I keep mine at 80. Okay, you know, like John from KG Tropicals, I think talks about, or is it him? He talks about keeping his tanks like all the way down to like 74, which I find crazy essentially. 78 to 82 is perfect. Okay, well, I'm just wondering because, you know, there might be, I'm worried about in my fish gallery, essentially, the shop I'm building, if the fluctuations are going to be, you know, detrimental to the fish, because there's going to be like, right away, I'm going to be dealing with spots where like, I'm going to have fans, and that's one of the worst things about a big space and keeping fish in it. You're going to have dead spots with heat, and I know firsthand, fish get sick when temps drop, and that's probably my biggest fear right now. Pick his brain about cichlids, but if you need info on loaches, I'm your guy, says Naturally Loachy. Yeah, if you guys have any info or want info on loaches, Naturally Loachy, his channel, he's super good at loaches, so. Alright guys, I think I'm going to wrap this up. I'm getting super tired. My eyes are squinty. It's 32 minutes, 2 live streams tonight. It was a blast. I'm probably going to do some more this week. Hit up the comment section on new ideas for keeping, or doing live streams. I kind of went out of my realm doing this one on African Cichlid Tank Mates and like keeping catfish with them. Because I keep Africans, I've kept them for years, but I don't know like a lot about them essentially, and breeding them, I kind of just let them do their thing. And you know, I'll be honest, if a fish dies, like I kind of just know that Africans, it comes with keeping Africans, and I know how to effectively keep them, but I haven't kept any like the big haps. And yeah, I'm blabbing. I'm ending the stream and going to sleep, guys. So hit the like button. I don't know, all that fancy stuff. So, all right, guys, keep on keeping fish, and thanks for stopping by in the stream here. And check out my podcast, Fish Aquarium Geeks, and there's tons of awesome stuff here. JH Aquatics has some episodes on the podcast, Fish Aquarium Geeks. Give it a listen while you're in the car, while you're at work, just wherever you want.